You are not allowed to impose, through the government, your religious beliefs on others. That is not what religious freedom is about. That's not what our country rests on.
Yeah.
And as a democracy, we respect other democracies' abilities to self-police and self-regulate. And so this process is underway. Our voices have been heard. Your voice is going to be heard. Obviously, there's international attention focused on this national citizenship registration.
Oh, you're going to enjoy this one. Today's a doubleheader. Ilhan Omar, a sitting member of Congress, tried to seize control of the narrative in not one, but two separate hearings. Point one focused on religion in America. The other zeroed in on U.S. foreign policy with India. In both moments, she relied on carefully loaded questions designed to steer the conversation toward a radical conclusion. And in both moments, the witnesses didn't flinch. They stayed calm, stayed sharp, and answered with facts instead of feelings. Today, we're breaking down the back-to-back reality checks delivered to Ilhan Omar. Let's get into it.
Under our Constitution, we are prohibited from establishing religion, yes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's what the
So
establishment
if you have members of Congress that are legislating laws in accordance with their faith in regards to abortion or LGBTQ or women or any of those things, that should be prohibited within our Constitution.
You are not allowed to impose, through the government, your religious beliefs on others. That is not what religious freedom is about. That's not what our country rests on.
Yeah. For many of us, religious freedom is extremely important. It is life and death in this country.
Yes.
Many of us fled our countries to come to the United States because that is the one thing that distinguishes us from many countries. But it's also important that we have a secular government and protect people's civil rights and access to those civil rights. And so I appreciate your testimony.
Pay close attention to how Ilhan Omar frames this question. This isn't a neutral inquiry about the Constitution. It's a strategic attempt to discredit any lawmaker whose personal faith influences their worldview. The implication is clear. If your beliefs come from faith, you shouldn't be allowed to legislate. That's a dangerous argument. What Ilhan Omar was fishing for was a statement that religious Americans should be sidelined from making laws altogether. She tried to blur the line between voting your conscience and establishing a state religion. But Miss Laser didn't fall for it. Miss Laser calmly explained the real standard. Government cannot force religious beliefs onto others. That distinction matters. In America, people of faith are not banned from public life. If your beliefs shape how you think about life, family, or values, you have every right to vote accordingly. That's not theocracy. That's participation. Ilhan Omar seems to argue that a secular government must exclude religious people entirely, and that idea is extreme. The witness made sure that reality was put back on the table.
Ambassador Wells, as you know, last month I let a letter to Ambassador Juster and Jones with you CC'd on it on the situation of Kashmir. Our partnership with India is strategic, but it's also based on our shared values of democracy, religious pluralism, and the respect of human rights. Under Modi and the BJP government, all of these mutual values have been threatened. And I think we have to understand the situation in Kashmir as part of an overall Hindu nationalism project of the BJP. So my first question to you is about the right of self-determination. Is the United States committed to emphasizing the centrality of Kashmir voices in determining the future of the Jammu and Kashmiri people?
I would disagree with the characterization of that we don't have a values-based relationship with the government of Prime Minister Modi. And I would just underscore that Prime Minister Modi came in a consecutive term. He achieved a majority vote in a very diverse
we can agree to disagree on that. I just would like to understand if we are
And they-
going to centralize the voices of the Kashmiri. And
But just to provide context, I mean, the actions he took were approved in Parliament, including by members of the opposition. The Supreme Court is reviewing that decision. The High Court is reviewing habeas corpus petitions. The institutions of India's democracy are working. We absolutely believe that Kashmiri's voice needs to be heard, that in any restoration, when there is restoration of an assembly, when there are state assembly elections, that's the way for Kashmiris to be able to register their views, also in peaceful assembly. And so I think the concern over the restrictions on movement and what we've seen over the last 78 days is that ability to protest peacefully has been difficult for Kashmiris to exercise.
yeah, I mean, and the part of the reason I asked and the part of the reason I emphasized the context of the larger PGP project is because I think in both cases, the impunity we have seen for crimes against Muslims under the PJP was warming for such worse things to come. In Assam, almost 2 million people are being asked to affirmably approve their citizenship. As my colleague and the chairman said, there have been official statements to the effect that no Buddhist, Christian, Sikh, or Jain refugees need to worry about their status. And so this is a clear anti-Muslim program. And I'm sure you've seen the same reports that the Indian government is starting to build camps in Assam, presumably to hold those who are unable to prove their citizenship. This is how the Rohingya genocide started. At what point do we no longer share values with India? Are we waiting for the Muslims in Assam to be put in those camps?
The certification of citizenship in Assam dates to a 2013 Supreme Court ruling that ordered the government to do so, to address questions of illegal immigration. The process, which continues to unfold and continues to be challenged in the court, it now has 1.9 million people who have not been certified. That includes both Muslims and Hindus. There are 300 appeal panels that are being set up for those individuals to appeal this determination. And as my colleague stated, we're concerned that many of these individuals who may not have the wealth or the education to successfully be able to document their citizenship are vulnerable. We will continue to watch this very closely, but I would stress that the appeal process is still open. The judicial process is still working in India. And as a democracy, we respect other democracies' abilities to self-police and self-regulate. And so this process is underway. Our voices have been heard. Your voice is going to be heard. Obviously, there's international attention focused on this national citizenship registration.
All right, take a breath, because what you just witnessed was a clash between ideology and diplomacy. First, the narrative versus the facts. Listen to how Ilhan Omar framed this exchange. She suggested that the world's largest democracy was laying the groundwork for genocide, casting a major U.S. ally as a villain on the global stage. Second, the fact-check bombshell. This is where the argument collapsed. Ilhan Omar attempted to equate India's National Register of Citizens in Assam with the Rohingya crisis. That comparison is alarming, but Alice Wells was prepared. Alice Wells provided the missing context. This process was ordered by the Supreme Court of India. It wasn't political theater. It was a judicial action addressing illegal immigration, something every sovereign nation has the right to control. And then came the number that changed everything. Nearly 1.9 million people were excluded, and Alice Wells made it clear that both Hindus and Muslims were affected. That single fact shattered the claim of religious targeting. Third, the mic drop moment. Alice Wells closed by emphasizing respect for other democracies and their ability to govern themselves. India has courts. India has an opposition. India has a constitution. Treating a strategic partner like an equal isn't avoidance, it's diplomacy. Point 2 hearings, point 2 witnesses, and 2 unmistakable reality checks for Ilhan Omar. Sound off in the comments. Does faith belong in politics? And was Alice Wells right to defend India's sovereignty? Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.